Hello, I'm Casey Aiken, and this is 21 This Week. Coming up next, Governor Hogan wants to increase the number of charter schools in Maryland, but the General Assembly may have other ideas. The Maryland Court of Appeals overhauls the state's bail system. Stop feeding the monster. In the coal age. Montgomery County Council struggles with adopting a fossil fuel divestment strategy. And will Under Armour suffer a backlash after the CEO's positive comments about President Trump? Stay tuned. Our panel of insiders will give you the story behind the story. We're joined by the Dean of Democratic Politics, Sam Statland. Industrialist and former Maryland Assistant Secretary of Business, William Askinazi. Republican activist, Diane Nash Dillon. And education advocate, Cynthia Rubenstein. Stay tuned for these stories and more on the next 21 This Week. Maryland Republican Governor Larry Hogan once again is proposing to increase the number of charter schools in Maryland. To those that think that public education is failing to properly educate Maryland's children adequately, charter schools are viewed as an alternative that provides quality education without the cost of private schools. According to U.S. News and World Report, there are now more than 6,400 charter schools in 42 states in the District of Columbia. Independently run but publicly financed, charters are still a small percentage of the nation's nearly 100,000 public schools, but they are popular. Americans are twice as likely to hold a favorable view of charter schools as an unfavorable view. And even though their performances varies widely. Cynthia, here in Montgomery County, we pride ourselves on our public school system, but realistically, there are underperforming public schools. Shouldn't those parents have the option of seeking a better education for their children without having to go to costly private schools?
Well, there are underperforming public schools in Montgomery County, but they have tremendous resources, and Montgomery County can count itself as successful at educating children in low-income communities. I am not sold on charter schools as the be-all, end-all solution for poor families who want better educations for their children. In the state of Maryland, the governor had a program called the Boost Program, which gives money, vouchers for students to transfer from public schools to private schools. 80% of the students who took advantage of those vouchers were already in private schools. So that did not touch families that charter school proponents say they want to reach.
But isn't it only fair? I mean, if a taxpayer is paying taxes already, that they allow themselves to use those dollars to go to any schools that they want? I mean, there are thousands of kids going to Catholic schools but their parents are also paying for public schools and supporting public education.
And those parents make that choice. But I think the bedrock of our democracy is the public school system. The
deficit that I find, Cynthia, the deficit that I find is yes, 80% of those who got vouchers were already in private schools. Why was that? It's because the parents of children who feel that they're getting a poor education aren't knowledgeable enough, trained enough, worked with enough within the system to apply for the vouchers, which goes back to, I think, the biggest problem with our public schools in that they don't really engage the total family in the educational process, where the charter schools have a reputation of being more encompassing, bringing families in, helping non-English speakers.
I'm not reflexively against charter schools, but I'm very skeptical of the way that the governor would set them up in the state.
Well, I want to go to Diane because there is an issue about the quality of charter schools. Diane, in 2013, Stanford University conducted a study of charter schools nationwide and found that 29% of the charters outperformed the public schools in the area of math. But 31% of charter schools underperformed public schools in the area of math. So doesn't this quality issue resonate, and isn't that part of the reason there is opposition to charter schools?
Well, on the contrary, I think that if 29% exceed the public schools, only 31% fall below, that still is a majority of the charter schools that are performing at or above the standard of public schools. And I'm mainly concerned about the monopoly that our public school system has on the education of kids in this country. I personally know people who have had children with the voucher program in the DC schools that were just devastated by the fact that the Obama administration had ended that use. And the children and the feedback that we got from the families was just devastating. Why can't they send their kids to schools that are as good as many of our politicians and elected leaders choose to send their children to?
Well, there's a great divide here in Maryland. Sam, education unions vociferously oppose Governor Hogan's plans. Is this because they're afraid of losing the monopoly that Diane just talked about?
I think I think
gotta
they're
go quickly.
more concerned about losing control within the school itself. A charter school has much more freedom in discipline, in setting requirements that are outside the public schools, enforcing them, encompassing families, and it takes control away from MCEA and the public unions.
Bill, you can already see that the 2018 races have started because the education unions are trying to target and Governor Hogan with the label of being a Trump education policy. Is it going to stick?
No.
And will it be successful?
No, Governor Hogan is an independent governor, has shown that he didn't come out for President Trump, he didn't support him. He's a 72% approval rating, is one of the most popular governors on both sides of the aisle. So he was pro-charter schools before it was cool to be pro-charter schools. So he's not doing it because of President Trump, he's doing it because he believes it is a sound policy choice.
And as many of you know, here in Montgomery County, I feel that the Board of Education should be eliminated because I think they're absolutely useless. Control should go back to the people who run the school system, beginning with the superintendent. So, you know, who needs them?
Well, Sam, I love you having the last word on this. We've got to go to our second topic. Even as the Maryland General Assembly debated legislation that would make progressive changes to the state's bail system, the Maryland Court of Appeals handed down a ruling this week that essentially abolishes the current bail system across the state. According to the Court of Appeals ruling, too many defendants were being held in jail solely because they could not afford bail. But beginning in July, judges will be required for the first time to consider whether a defendant can afford to make bail as part of their pretrial release conditions. And furthermore, the judge will be required to consider whether a defendant is a flight risk and, more importantly, a danger to the community. Bill, what's your opinion of the Court of Appeals decision?
Well, you know, it's a balancing act, and it always is with this pretrial release program. The judges still have discretion after this. They still have to look at the flight risk. They still have to balance it. What they can't do is they can't deprive an individual of the freedom if they don't have the money. And so it's a constitutional argument about having the resources to purchase the freedom or not. My concern is that too many defendants will flee. They will commit crimes while they're on pretrial release. And so I hope judges are, and I believe they will, exercise their discretion to impose electronic surveillance and other methods other than money to equalize the risk of these arrested folks committing additional crimes.
But the bailment industry, and there is bail bondsmen have an industry of themselves. Yeah. They will tell you that money alone doesn't bring somebody back.
Right.
That it's an important tool in bringing a defendant back.
The District of Columbia has gone to this system back in the 90s, and the biggest effect really was it reduced dramatically the amount of bail bondsmen going to that point. And secondly, a person is interviewed and pre-screened by professionals within the court system who still either recommend bonding or not bonding based upon ties to the community, willingness to come back and serve it to appear in court, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it does well.
Well, good, but I want to ask you another question.
Yeah, okay.
I want a follow-up question is, why didn't the Court of Appeals wait for the legislature to come to the same conclusion?
Well,
they were debating a bill. They're debating a bill in the legislature for the last month that were addressing these very issues. Why couldn't the Court of Appeals wait? Judicial activism is a problem, is it not?
No, I think that the instigator of their decision really was our Attorney General Brian Frosch, who, while he was in the legislature, desperately tried to get this legislation passed. It wouldn't go anywhere. He pushed for the court system to instigate. They did. and now legislation led by Mr. Frost being asked for the legislature to reintroduce it.
As we found out this week, the judiciary has a political component too. And
Yeah.
they may not have wanted to wait for the liberalized Democratic legislature to act even more so in favor of the defendants and therefore abolish bail in
Now,
total.
Bill, this is an issue that doesn't have to be politicized, because here you have people in jail who don't belong being in jail. I'm sure there are independents, Democrats, and Republicans. And we had a Democratic Attorney General push the courts to act
Sam,
with the
you've
overall
had-
goal,
you've
with
had
the
an
overall goal
overwhelmingly
of
controlled,
pushing the legislature to
Democratic-controlled
act.
legislature that has failed to act.
It's not my fault that the Republicans don't get their act together to run for office.
No, Sam, the question is, you can hardly blame the legislature for not acting. They're controlled by the Democratic Party. If the voters elected these people, shouldn't they be allowed to make the decision?
Listen, we just had a national election.
We did.
Everybody thought
It was
the
90
Democrat
days
was
ago,
gonna win,
and Trump won,
instead the
Sam.
Republican won. I ate crow over that, and I must admit that here in Maryland, those who are active on given issues should go ahead and back a party. Get out there. If you're that upset about something, don't complain.
Look, I
some
don't
skin
really
into
have
the
a
game.
problem with the changes that were made. It was really how it was done. I think the legislature should have been making the changes.
Well, maybe
not
they
the Court
will.
of
Yeah,
Appeals.
I've got to tell you, I really have a problem with courts these days, and I think one of the biggest issues is that they have become political activists. And I think it's time for Congress, who actually sets the parameters of our courts, to take the issue on and maybe streamline some things.
Thank you, Diane. All right, when we come back from this short break, experts think that socially responsible investing is hooey. Will the council adopt the fossil fuel divestment strategy? And how far is the anti-Trump movement willing to attack businesses that are viewed as pro-Trump? Stay tuned. And welcome back. The Montgomery County Council is reportedly struggling with the decision of whether to divest its county employee pension funds from fossil fuel company stock. A bill sponsored by Council President Roger Berliner and Nancy Navarro has drawn fierce opposition, however, from retirees as well as the board that oversees the pension funds. Gino Wren, chairman of the 13-member Board of Investment Trustees, regards the bill as an unwarranted interference with the panel's legal obligation to maximize returns. Sam, Chairman Wren is quoted as saying that there is no disagreement about the moral urgency of limiting climate change, but there are already safeguards in place directing socially responsible investing. And as noble as all this sounds, Sam, Christine Wood, a Vassar College trustee, says that divestment doesn't hurt those companies. It hurts the institution because it leaves them voiceless, and it's just an easy way out. What do you think?
I think that the county council has no business introducing meaningless legislation that's not going to make a hill of beans difference to anybody. And let's talk about the investment. If you got a 401k plan, a pension or profit sharing plan, an IRA, you are investing in companies that produce energy, and what we're talking about are fossil fuels. But what do they do with these fossil fuels? What actually happens? Cosmetics, pharmaceuticals are two good examples. So does that mean that we shouldn't buy Merck stock, we shouldn't buy Johnson & Johnson, Estee Lauder, et cetera, all the way down the line? How much diversing are we going to do?
Exactly.
And in dollars and cents, it's meaningless to everyone.
Thank you, Sam. Bill,
Yeah.
Professor Daniel Feischl prepared an exhaustive study on the subject of socially responsible investing and concluded that fossil fuel divestment is a costly and ineffective investment strategy. Feischl concluded his report with the comment, by contrast, any benefits from fossil fuel divestment are likely to be non-existent. There is no basis to believe that divestment can affect the stock prices of business decision and targeted firms. What do you think?
I think that the county council should show some restraint and not act on impulse to control every social objective that's within their grasp. I think that there's an independent board. It's responsible. It's charged with being fiscally prudent. And for instance, what if a county council member decides next week that sugary drinks are not socially responsible. And they want to ban and boycott Pepsi-Cola. And they want to pull every pension dollar out of Pepsi-Cola. I think it's ridiculous. It's overreaching and it's not respectful of other independent trustee branches that have that authority. So it shows to me that they should step back and take stock of their own business.
And what the county council really should be concerned about is the board that invests the money of these plans. Montgomery County's investments is terrible. Let's look at the WSSC. The WSSC does such a great job that they're actually providing benefits for their retirees. They're not deficit funded the way we are. If you want to jump into something meaningful. Who's managing the money? And in my opinion, Gino Wren and the rest of this board are terrible at it.
And who elected the county council to make socially objective rulings to overreach?
Cynthia.
This was an idea that ran amok. And now the county council has to figure out a way to walk it back, and the trustees have to figure out a way to walk it back to help the county council save face. The symbol, it was a nice symbolic gesture as an idea, but it should never have gone anywhere from an idea.
Right, but
It's
all
been
of you,
over a
all of
year.
you,
Wasted
Over a year.
time.
11
And our money.
different
it's a waste of time.
amendments.
Well, I'm glad,
11
but
different
you all missed the fundamental point.
Which is
It's based on junk science.
No, Diane, I love you.
No.
But it's not. This is an election year. This is Roger Berliner wanting to get his name out in front as a progressive so that he wins the nomination for county executive.
That's a good way to lose votes, not gain votes.
This is what's going on, and you guys missed it by a mile. I just want to tell you.
Well, let me tell
Wake
you,
up and
it's
smell
not-
and smell the organic coffee beans
It's not
coming
working.
from Mallorca.
It's
Yeah,
not
but-
working.
where was
It's not working.
Navarro in that?
Yeah. Our next, this is the best topic of the night, everybody. This week, in response to the Nordstrom's department store announcement that it would no longer carry Ivanka Trump's clothing line, I like her boots, by the way, President Trump tweeted out about the unfairness of the action, as if Harry Truman didn't get upset when little Margaret got criticized. Nonetheless, the anti-Trump movement seems to be gaining momentum, and more businesses find themselves in the crosshairs of the angry left. Locally, Baltimore-based sports clothier Under Armour, which can get anything it wants in Baltimore right now, discovered it was the target of the movement as a result of its president and founder, Kevin Plank, giving an CNBC interview where he said that having a pro-business president is a real asset to this country. Diane, in that very same interview with CNBC, Plank also was critical of many of President Trump's proposed policies, particularly when it came to trade and the border tax. So why did his company become so controversial?
Well, let me first say, in the interest of full disclosure, I love Under Armour wear and Ivanka Trump shoes. But let me get back to the subject. I don't think that this movement is gaining traction. I think it's just the Democrats having a hissy fit. I don't think it's going to hurt Under Armour. I think they have a fabulous product. I think that they are a good citizen to the state of Maryland. And again, I do not believe in boycotts. And I think this is the problem with the Democrats. If they disagree with something, they want to eliminate it. They don't want to have both sides. They don't want to listen to reason and have somebody offer a valuable opinion, because if it's not their opinion, it's nonsense.
Well, I'm going to go to Cynthia first. The anti-Trumpers even have a website, grabyourwallet.org, that provides a detailed list of pro-Trump companies. Now, Under Armour isn't on this list, but there are 60 companies that they are recommending should be boycotted. The website even has talking points that you should deliver to the company, which basically says, when you stop dealing with the devil, Donald Trump, then I'll come back to you. Cynthia, isn't this activism run amok?
No, this is freedom of speech. And we are in a very highly charged political atmosphere. And if this helps people feel better, if this is a balm to their broken spirits, Let
Cynthia-
them boycott.
Let's
Cynthia,
come
you know,
back to
wait,
finance.
Sam,
Let
Sam,
them
Sam.
boycott. Let them boycott.
You know, I'm going to give you the message that our favorite viewer did. Sam,
Yes.
the election was over in November. That was 90 days ago. Get over it.
Sanity
Isn't that
check.
the
What the
right
hell does
message?
that do? Look, Under Armour stock in the past 12 months, before the stuff going on with not buying their products, has dropped 50%, from about $40 a share to 20. So what was Plank upset about? What he was upset about is anything that affects the cost of materials coming into this country, stuff where he's getting his clothes made overseas, et cetera, et cetera. That's what he was upset
That's what he
about.
criticized, and that's what he criticized. Bill,
As well
Exactly.
he should.
This
As
is-
well
let's have a
he
s-
should.
Sanity check here. Okay, this is censorship. If I own a company and I say that I support the president for whatever policy reasons that I as an individual wants to say, and then there's a boycott against me because the people out there don't agree with what I say as a citizen, it's the reverse of free speech almost. It's like you're taking out a targeted, it's not an individual on an individual. Now you're encouraging people to deprive that individual of leading a company that affects thousands, if not millions, of stockholders who are all political stripes. To me, that smacks of the worst type of censorship that we have. And I think that the people who are creating these movements really need to be, frankly, brought
But
to
it also
light.
And
points
I
out
think
that the
I think this
executive of a
movement will
company-
burn bright for a very, very short time, and then it will dissipate.
Executives
Wait a
of
minute.
company
Look,
have,
look,
Casey,
Nordstrom's does away with Ivanka Trump products. Macy's did away with Donald Trump products.
And their stock tanked.
The criticism of anything that smacks of dealing with Donald Trump keeps growing. Sam,
Look, the
wrap
basic-
this up for us.
A president of a company has to be careful of what he says. And the perfect example of that is Diebold, where the president of Diebold says, I'm going to support any Republican nominee, which caused his election systems to absolutely tank because there was such an uproar of partisanship.
So now we live in a world where any president, a man or a woman of any company, has to self-censor for fear of having their products.
Correct.
being
No,
All right,
only
wrap
if
it.
you're-
Wrap,
only if you're a
we got
Republican.
to wrap it up, guys. This has been a great discussion. Stay tuned for parting shots. Now, welcome back with parting shots, Sam Statland.
My parting shot goes to Council members Berliner and Navarro for introducing and messing with this pension legislation that has wasted hundreds of thousands of county dollars in time of citizens as well as government for no absolute reason, and it's a great example why Mr. Berliner should never be elected executive.
Thank you, Sam. Wow. Bill, Askinazi.
I'm nostalgic for the time when entertainers entertained and sports and athletes performed. I got to tell you, I am tired of social platforms with captive audiences. My hat's off to Lady Gaga. Yes, Lady Gaga. Not only she did a wonderful performance in the Super Bowl, but she resisted that impulse to trash President Trump and be nonpartisan. She made a beautiful performance, and it was family friendly, and she took $0 for that performance.
Thank you, Bill.
Great.
Diane Dillon, your first opportunity for a parting shot.
Thank you, Casey. My parting shot goes to the Democrats in Montgomery County and Maryland, and to the Democrat senators in the State House who just passed Joint Resolution 5, the Maryland Defense Act, Protection Act, which is sort of a hissy fit and trying to climb on the back of the other states around the country that are suing Donald Trump over his immigration slow up. A prudent move to try to save us from possible infiltration of jihadis. But Maryland thinks that it needs to get in on the act, so thank you for the first parting shot in the 2018 gubernatorial election. We're ready for you.
And Cynthia, now you get to wrap it up.
Okay, so I'm still talking elections, and yesterday or today, the first announcement of a county council candidate, Marilyn Balcom, who is the CEO and president of the Gaithersburg Germantown Chamber of Commerce. Very smart, very savvy, very pragmatic, very thoughtful. Run, Marilyn, run.
And by the way, she is a former panelist on 21 This Week and a graduate of the greatest leadership Montgomery County Leadership Montgomery class, the class of 2000, which, by the way, I happen to be a part of. I want to thank you, panel, for being here today. I want to thank the audience for tuning in each and every week to Montgomery County's hardest hitting political talk show for 21 this week. I'm Casey Aiken.